We conducted research in Morea, which is in French Polynesia, very small little island in the middle of the South Pacific. The island is completely surrounded by coral reef, and it's a relatively healthy coral reef, and scientists from all over the world come there because basically they track the coral communities and the fish communities over time. And we are really interested in the symbiosis between coral animals and the dinoflagellate algae that live inside of the coral cells.
A lot of times when we are studying organisms on the reef, we see a lot of interactions like, predators eating prey or grazing on macroalgae, things interacting with their mouths to eat other things, and less focus is put on what comes out the back end. What's really neat about this study is that it starts documenting what happens to these beneficial coral microbes when they pass through the gut of a fish predator. Do they stay alive? What kinds are there? And do they matter for organisms out on the reef once they're released in feces?
Most of all, my realization was how exciting it is to see a fish poop at some point, how exciting it is to see a fish defecate. Because some days you would spend up to 8 hours in the water following fish around and just making check marks whenever they would bite a coral or if they would bite anything else. And then some of these fish don't defecate that often. They only defecate once every hour or so. So once every hour you would see that happen, and you would be so excited, and then hopefully you would be able to measure the fecal pellet.
What Karsten and others found in this project is that fish that eat corals as most or all of their diet release lots of these live beneficial coral microbes in their feces, and that's a way that those microbes can get dispersed around the reef to baby corals that need to take up their first microbes, or maybe even during bleaching or times on the reef when the partnership between a coral and its microorganisms breaks down due to warming seas driven by climate change. Who knows, maybe we'll find out that these coral-eating fish even help sort of disperse these microorganisms like a probiotic across the reef, and maybe they can even help sick corals recover.
And coral reefs around the world are in decline because of climate change, pollution, and human pressures. I think what that really tells us is that it's really important to manage these fish populations well and conserve fish populations, because we don't really know all of the interactions that are happening on these coral reefs. And some coral reef species may be a lot more important for coral reef conservation than we initially thought.